Hi, and welcome to Milehighdiscussions. I'm your host, Henry Pace, and today I'm joined by my fellow host,
Emily Harrison.
And these are our guests.
I'm Alex Nesbitt. I'm Brandit Jager. I'm a junior at East. I'm also a junior. I participate in band is my main activity, and I do swimming and also National Honor Society.
Very cool.
I'm also a junior at East High School, and I am the executive producer for this television show.
I'm a senior and newly accepted into college, so I'm just happy to be on the show. All right.
Good to hear.
So I think we have our first question for the day that Emily has.
Yeah, so in Denver Public Schools, a district that has a lot of diversity when it comes to people of different races, different genders, socioeconomic statuses, backgrounds, there's a lot of stigma around people of different backgrounds. I mean, obviously having access to people from lots of different backgrounds means that there's going to be a lot of different stereotypes. What stereotypes and what stigmas have you guys experienced around socioeconomics?
I tend to notice that people who get worse grades, people who aren't as good in school, like things like studying and stuff like that, they're often viewed as people who tend to be lower class, which is unfortunate because that creates this stigma of like poor people not doing as well in school.
Why do you think they're seen as lower class?
Well, I don't know. I feel like that's just something that's been associated.
Yeah, I feel like when you look at like traditional standards of how people are raised and how you succeed in school, I think a lot of the time people see it as like you have a very strong background and a very strong family to support you and help you, learn ways to study and, really try to succeed. And I feel like a stigma around, the lower class is that a lot of the time people believe that they don't have, support systems at home and they don't have people to help them study, and it's very sadly not, a stigma is a stigma because it's not true. I mean, it's usually untrue, and stereotypes like that tend to be such broad blanket statements that people are encompassed within them, and it's unfair to them because they are, thrown into this group of people who don't have any support systems.
When you say people are kind of thrown into groups that don't have support systems, you mean, okay, so when you come from a background that maybe you didn't have as much support at home or your parents are not there all the time, that you're more likely to go to places or be part of like groups that are considered lower class or have more stigma around them, or maybe join groups, like, could you expand?
I feel like a lot of people believe that that is what happens when you don't have those support systems, and I think people create their own support systems, and they a lot of people, whether depending on how independent you are and how much you've learned to support yourself, I feel like a lot of the time you have to teach yourself those kinds of support systems and teach yourself methods for success in school and being able to study and being able to push yourself to the extent that you can succeed and you can get the grades and the things that you want in life, especially.
Okay, cool. I know that at East High School there's like an AVID program, right, that helps students that come from harder backgrounds, or the free and reduced lunch program that I think we have throughout DPS that helps students who come from worse backgrounds kind of get a leg up into school and kind of avoid those traps of being involved in drugs and even being involved in maybe groups that have worse reputations in general. And definitely there are students that avoid those, but to what degree would you say that students actually do fall into those traps and fit the stigma?
Well, I feel like obviously there's a percentage of people that do, but to throw all those people into that category is, unfair to them.
Yeah, of course.
And, when you have, these programs, it's all up to, a lot of the time, the student themselves or their families to help them get into these programs, and that is very difficult if they don't have the personal motivation or, the drive to go and help themselves in those areas.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the school to prison pipeline is definitely something that is real, but as Alex said earlier, to group everyone into that isn't necessarily fair, because I feel like a lot of people are just lacking the means in their families to be given the same kind of support systems.
Yeah.
Whether it's, and that often is associated with a bad parenting, but sometimes really on the lower end of the socioeconomic spectrum, parents have to work a lot. And sometimes parents might be working 3, 4, 5 jobs and not have enough time to get their kids enrolled in that, and that, you know, that's, I feel like that's what causes that association there.
Do you think students like have control over it? So obviously, there are many students whose parents, have you've noted, like have to work a lot, and I think a lot of students do work or they try to help out their families, and obviously some students can't advocate for themselves, and others maybe don't have the same means or don't really know how to advocate for themselves. I'm just wondering, when it comes to mind that we are trying to help people of all these backgrounds that again don't have the same resources, and maybe their parents aren't home, and so obviously they need someone to advocate for them. Do they have advocates within school or within maybe people outside of school that will speak for those students?
Yeah, and I think that's the good thing, because the school environment with all these programs, as you were referring to earlier, like AVID, these are designed to give people the support when they might not necessarily get it from another source.
Okay.
So they definitely do have that voice and support system there, because school staff does care and does want to see every student achieve success regardless of their socioeconomic background. And so all these programs have been put in place, especially things like free and reduced lunch and, you know, all these things that are designed to, yeah.
I feel like a lot of the time, though, again, coming back to this idea of self-motivation, the kids that are accessing, you know, things like their counselors and AVID and all these other programs, such as like the Angel Foundation, you know, they're the kids that are, again, interested in, you know, helping themselves succeed in school, and I feel like those are not the people that need to be reached in these situations, because a lot of the time the kids that, you know, don't care about school and they don't care about trying to better their understanding of the world and their learning are the kids that, you know, are going to ignore programs like the free and reduced lunch or the AVID or, you know, the Angel Foundation, specifically because they don't care enough to try and, you know, support themselves, because they don't want to succeed, they don't care to succeed, and that is truly where I feel like more help needs to be, you know, pushed towards.
So how do you hold them accountable for all those who don't have these opportunities and fall into these traps? How do you hold them accountable, knowing that it's not necessarily all of their fault and that they still have a chance to come back and have success? Like, how do you hold them accountable?
And Henry, just to expand a little bit more on your question, the other day their East High School hosted talks on student equity. In specific, we talked about like diversity and especially student behavior when it comes to ISS, OSS, and other behavior suspensions. Also, it was noted that Black students had like 4 times the amount of OSS and other behavior suspensions, but like ISS was a lot more equal among races. Also, special education department kids had a lot more people that had outside of school suspension, is what that is, more behavior and less in-school suspensions. So so those are possible measures that are already in place to help deal with behavior. What do you think that these statistics mean, and are there other ways that we are controlling or helping those students access?
Well, I feel like within the classroom is really the place to start, because I feel like a lot of teachers, when they see a kid that is, you know, behaviorally challenged and they don't want to be there and they're trying hard to, you know, fail themselves, or maybe they're not even trying to, you know, the teacher may ignore those kinds of students, and that is a problem a lot of the time, I feel like, you know. Especially you see it in, you know, language classes and classes where kids are there simply because they want to, you know, just get the grade and go. They don't really care about trying to learn something or better themselves through that. And I feel like it's a failure on the teacher's part a lot of the time, and maybe even, of course, on the students a little bit, but they can't be held 100% accountable for that because of the fact that they may not have, you know, been shown how to care about things like that, like school and like learning and bettering themselves.
Do you have a way to solve that and balance that?
I feel like, as you were talking about earlier, the OSS and like ISS system in dealing with those kids is not the best result, because it essentially becomes this vicious cycle where you have students who don't want to try hard, and then they're being neglected by teachers sometimes, and they're being thrown into ISS and OSS, which makes them want to try even less, and makes them get in more trouble, and makes them see school as less, you know, worth. And so I feel like as Alex was saying, the support system should really start in the classroom, and I don't feel like, especially when it comes to students who may be quieter or may not be trying on their grades or maybe skipping classes, I feel like it's a responsibility on the part of the teacher to specifically reach out to those kids because they need additional support
And then
systems.
how do you reach out to those kids though when you're trying to balance the classroom and you're trying to balance maybe your own personal needs with the needs of the student? Obviously being like holding a class of 35 people who all have different minds, different backgrounds, different IEPs can be really, really difficult. And I think a lot of times we overestimate how much teachers can take on. Do you have a specific piece of advice that you would give teachers for helping reach out to those students in a comprehensive way?
I think you could have teachers like write notes to students like that saying, just please stay after class for a few minutes so I can have a quick conversation with you, get to connect with that student.
Maybe.
I don't know. I feel like that's a difficult thing to do because, again, if these kids don't care, it might be very difficult to imbue, and make them want to be there and want to feel like they are, respected and they are learning something for themselves. And, it's difficult to say like where the origin of that would be coming from, the, uncaring about what they are doing and what, going to school and, trying as hard as they can to keep this routine of, what a lot of kids might see as like very daunting, and like you're supposed to be in school for a long, long time. Like you are forced to go to school by the government, and that's a very difficult thing to overcome. And like to be a teacher and try and, have them want to learn and have them want to grow themselves, it's difficult. So as far as like how they could do that, I think the only way to do it would be to, really change the way that you teach, which is a complete rewrite of the system, which would be, probably too big of an overwrite to really.
But I think maybe we do need some reform and
Because
some
I
transformation.
definitely think that the current system, the way that it is now, doesn't
And at least students
allow
behind, maybe.
for that, yeah.
Well, I think right now, like, we're all in agreement that the school system, of course, needs to be reformed. There needs to be improvements. But when it comes to these lower level kids, these failing students, all of our suggestions for teachers to do more and more, it eventually will start to detract from those students who have that desire and passion to learn and who are at school for the right reasons and give it their all. At what point do you say we have to cut the losses and we have to actually continue to support the students that really want it? At what point do you say, hey, all of these kids are taking too much away from my hard-trying students, or my try-hard students, or even my average students, and I don't have that amount of time. So at what point do you say enough is enough, and how do you decide?
That's a hard question, Henry.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like when it comes to those students who try exceptionally hard, I feel like they're not necessarily going to lose that.
What about your
passion that they
average?
have
What
for it.
about your like average C and B student? The student that maybe doesn't put in the best effort, but still shows up to class most of the time, does most of their homework, gets very normal test scores. At what point, when they need that extra push and the teacher's not there because they're helping too many of the failing students, like how do you decide? I know it's like almost an impossible question to place value on that. How would you decide?
To really like think about something like this, you have to start thinking about like how much help do those average students really need. Like obviously they're at C's and B's and they probably have some level of motivation, but overall just like I think it's very difficult to place value, like you were saying, on the education of people when they don't really want to learn. And so like maybe creating some form of outside help would even be the way to do it, but like how do you reach those students is really the question. I feel like it's
Well, I guess we'll just have to kind of explore that more too, and teachers, I guess, will have to be more adaptive, and maybe future conferences will have to look at finding those methods for reaching all students effectively, which is, of course, the endless question. But
All right. So when we come back, we'll be talking about the same topic. So please stay with us. Thank you.
Hi, I'm John, and in 1 year, this will be my career. Hi, I'm Vanessa, and this will be my career in 10 months.
Hi, my name is Jose. This is my career in this 37 weeks.
With nearly 30 certificate programs, you can go from classroom to career in less than a year.
One of the most important resources to our state is water, and it must be protected. Jobs in water quality are in high demand, and Emily Griffith Technical College, with help from Miller Coors, knows how important it is to have qualified workers helping to protect this resource. Want to be a part of it? EGTC has the right program for you in water quality management. In less than a year, you could be certified and on your way doing your part in protecting this most important natural resource. Go to emilygriffith.edu to start your career in water quality management.
Hi, and welcome back to Milehighdiscussions. Today we are talking about socioeconomics and the stigma surrounding that topic. But before we get back to that segment, what I'd really like to hear is about Alex's passion. We'd like to learn a little bit more about both of you, so I guess Alex should go first.
Well, I feel like a really important part of who I am as a person is my music, and I feel like beyond just, the surface level of music is, a very interesting and beautiful thing. I feel like it's a very important outlet for myself, and I feel like music has so much emotion. When you think of music, it's artists putting in their purest emotions and putting in what they feel about the world and the people around them. And I feel like my music is just a way for me to really cope with the world and interact with everything that I experience as, someone who is experiencing plenty of new things every day. And so when I listen to music, even you can pick out pieces that are just truly like powerful to you, that strike you as something that the artist wanted to put down for you, and that's really something that I try to do when I write music. I try and think of lyrics.
You're a bassist, right?
Yeah, a bassist, and I play guitar as well. So a little bit there, a little bit of piano, just whatever I need, lyrics, and just trying to write music and try and almost find my way through the world with that music.
What role does music play in your average life, what you do every day? I mean, you obviously have great passion for it, but...
Yeah, well, I play in the jazz band at East High School, which is a really great program. Keith Oxman is the teacher, and every day it's just this amazing outlet for myself to be able to, be with these people and experience something from even other people having written it. It's so spectacular to be able to experience what other writers wanted you to feel and to see when you're reading a piece of music.
Have you heard him play, Brant?
Yeah, I have. He's really
You have?
good. Yeah.
That's so cool. What was he playing?
Guitar and singing as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Any particular song that strikes your fancy?
I mean, I've only heard one, and I don't know the name of it. He was just playing. But yeah.
Sometimes.
Ooh, now you can get all the ladies playing there. Have you ever used your music to either make friends in high places or get a girl?
I think you need confidence before you can do that, and I'm lacking in that department a lot of the time. So, no. The answer is no.
What a shame.
I know.
Brant, what do you do in your free time?
Well, I think, especially when it comes to wintertime, skiing is something that I'm very passionate about, because even though I'm on the swim team, I've been swimming for a long time.
How long?
And doing a lot of it. Since I was 9, I've been on, since I was like 7 or 6, I've been on clubs.
What's your stroke?
Freestyle, mostly. And I've been starting to get more and more burnt out of it. But yeah, I just do it all the time, and it's like, ugh. But skiing is something that I feel like I love it more and more every single time that I do it.
Okay, where do you normally ski?
Winter Park.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's just something extremely freeing about it. It's a place where you can not have to worry about the rest of what's going on.
Having seen Brant ski before, I don't think I've ever seen anyone go down a mountain faster with more control than Brant has.
That sounds like a teenage boy thing.
It's like he's like Sonic. It's a
definitely
streak.
A hot dogger, yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh no, dude! I thought that was French fries. It's not a hot dog. Your skis are French fries when you go down the mountain. That's what I was taught, at least. No, but so for you, so you like the more open runs. You feel like that's more freeing, or
Well,
so are
my
you-
favorite is mogul skiing
Okay.
because I really like being up where I feel like there's trees all around and I'm in the middle of nowhere and there's no civilization anywhere near. That's just a nice comfort, I guess.
And do you want to ski at clearly in Colorado we have maybe arguably the best mountains in the world. Maybe right now not the best snow. But have you skied at like any other resorts? And then
I've skied in California and I've skied in Utah and I've skied all around Colorado. And I actually have plans with one of my best friends to go ski the Alps when I'm in college.
That's so cool.
do you think that will actually so all these experiences of being able to travel, whether it's for skiing or anything, will help you later on? Like, have you learned, taken anything, either of you, taken away anything from either your passions?
Well, I think as you're referring to with travel, I would say travel is something that absolutely I'm passionate about. And I think that as a human being born on this planet, if you're just going to see one part of it, or you're just going to see, the hometown or city or country where you've grown up, you're not doing yourself any favors. You have to go out and see the world. And so I think that I'm very privileged in the fact that I've been able to go a lot of places and I've been able to witness a lot of different cultures and see a lot of different things, and it really opens your eyes to how the standard here is not the standard everywhere, and it's sort of humbling in that way.
Well, actually, that is a perfect transition to the next question. Is that's a very an astute observation, and
You've
I think
had these experiences, and most people don't get the experiences. So how do you think that your having had the experiences transforms? So you say it transforms how you see the world, right? But how does it transform how others see you for having had those experiences when others may not have had the opportunity?
I think it depends on who it is. I mean, I don't ever sometimes I get self-conscious about the fact that I don't want to sound like I'm bragging or anything like that, because I definitely do think that there's a judgment there of wow, you're so cool, you got
You went to Tanzania over the summer.
Right. I don't know. It's not something that I really push out as much.
Okay.
But I feel like sometimes with some people it's they want to learn more and they want to talk about them, and for others it's I don't really know if I've ever noticed anyone's change in perception because of the way that I am, but yeah.
I think, especially with the idea of travel, I think people tend to respect the idea that people are trying to better themselves and they're trying to experience things they haven't seen. And to relate it to the idea of money, travel is a very expensive thing, and I feel like a lot of people also sadly relate, the ability to travel and the desire to travel to, having so much money. So if you get to travel a lot, and I feel like you've definitely experienced this kind of stigma, Brant, but in the sense of dang, you get to travel, I wish I was that rich,
Right.
And I feel like a lot of people are stigmatized specifically because they get to go on such, they have beautiful opportunities to do this, and they're stigmatized for, using these opportunities, and that seems so silly because...
And I just want to say, I think it's funny because there's always that, dang, you get to travel that much? I wish I was that rich. It never stops. There's always, and so in that way, I feel like there's always that stigma of you being jealous of people and people being jealous of you, because there's
we do live in
always-
a very materialist world, and
Exactly,
those
yeah.
things are a lot more clear than they are in maybe other nations, simply because it's pushed out there on social media to what when you share these experiences, a lot of times, how do you share them first? What mode? Do you just talk to your friends about them, or is it
I feel
something?
if it just comes up in conversation.
It just comes up in conversation. Okay.
openly start a conversation
Okay.
by talking about
Yeah,
things
a
that
lot
they
of students will
experience.
like show that they've gone to some country, like maybe they'll show themselves like on Instagram with a photo of them like hugging a ton of Dominican Republic kids, for example, saving the world and building like a house or whatever.
I think, yeah, a lot of the time I think people, there's definitely a line between people who are trying to like brag, and you can tell when like somebody is so excited about like their adventure that they just went on, they want to share it. And I feel like a lot of people mistake that a lot of the time for trying to brag about it. I feel like when you go on such an amazing adventure and do such amazing things, you want to share that experience with people. You want to, share what you've learned with other people. And I feel like a lot of people misinterpret that as like, oh, I'm so good, I went and did all these things and you didn't get to do it. But I feel like alternatively, I feel like people are trying to almost reach out and say like, hey, look at this cool experience, like take what I learned and like maybe learn a little bit from it also. And like there's so many things that you can learn from other people that people are turning away from because
Yeah, and
of that.
when I share things, there are also like some things that I do leave out because I don't want to seem like I'm trying to like
Yeah, trying to seem like you're
brag or
better
trying
than
to
someone.
right.
So like
I usually stick to like basics,
Yeah, I
not
was
going into detail.
reading an article recently about colleges who stop looking at the like travel, like they start saying, okay, so you went on a trip to another country. They don't see that as a bettering experience because a lot of students don't have the same opportunities, or maybe they're seen as like, oh, you just went to brag. I think colleges kind of rely a little bit on that stigma perhaps, and this might just be an opinion of me, but I wonder if perhaps the way that students have portrayed their own experiences and gaining things has come off as superficial to people outside of the high school activity. Do you guys have any friends or teachers or people that maybe aren't like your close friends that maybe know, oh, I'm not bragging about it? Do you think that in some ways it can negatively affect how you're seen outside of the education system?
I feel like really it just comes down to how you personally try to outwardly, portray yourself, and a lot of the time people misinterpret, and that's very sad. But like you were just saying, Brent, like you try to, alter your image, and it's sad that you have to alter your image, and you can't just share openly because of the fact that these stigmas exist and that people are so against it that, like, if you say something wrong, they'll change their opinion of you even though they've known you for God only knows how long,
It's so easy for people to think that you're bragging when you're not trying to, or like vice versa. Like I feel like.
But why should you care? Like, why should you actually care about what that other person thinks, regardless if you're bragging or if you're not?
'Cause it
I
affects
assume
your success.
we know you're not bragging.
Because it affects your success. Because if someone thinks that you're bragging and you're not, then colleges are, or I would even just say colleges, because a lot of high schoolers, when we go to high school,
Well, it
we
detracts
go
a lot
to
of
get to
value.
college.
So what you were referencing in your white savior story is like, oh, I went to the Dominican Republic and I built a house. Like, look at me. You're still detracting. I feel like when people do that, when this common perception is held, that you're actually detracting, regardless if they're bragging or not from those achievements. So why should someone hide it? Like, it's your life. It's no one else's. And frankly, when you are forced to hide it, you actually detract from yourself. So do either you have any opinions on should I stay more conservative, maybe like he does, or whether I should actually probably just be honest? I don't like. It's never right to brag. We can all agree on that. No one should ever brag like, oh, look at me. But you shouldn't have to hide it, right? But yeah,
I
we
feel
still
like
do.
while that's good, that's an unrealistic expectation, because it's so easy to be like, oh, people's thoughts don't affect me. What people say, it doesn't
high
matter.
schoolers, though.
But especially not only high schoolers,
We're
but like in the materialistic Western society, while it might be the better choice to be like, oh, nobody's words or thoughts affect me, that's not the reality of how our lives are based and how our interactions with each other are based.
Why can't you strive for that?
because there's this.
Because there's a stigma.
Yeah,
that's
of course,
blocking
there's
it.
stigma,
But
and
then
there's such a
we
deep
should try
human.
to alter the stigma.
Oh, of
But
course.
that's asking for the alteration of Western materialistic society.
Well, I think with that statement, a very positive statement, I think that will conclude this episode of Milehighdiscussions. Thank you for sticking around and watching.
And don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram and possibly Twitter at Milehighdiscussions with an S.
All right. Thank you very much. Good night.